In this session, we'll be looking at sustainability through a multi-generational lens. This conversation is so important because so much can be learned by working together and listening to each other's experiences. Our next guest leading the discussion is Saghir, the head of Sustainable, Responsible Impact Investing for Mackenzie Investments. She drives a cohesive SRI strategy across the organization and leads the development of new initiatives. As a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion in the workplace, she spearheaded many mentorship programs, including one that focuses on women in leadership. Join me in welcoming to the stage Saghir.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone tuning in today. At Mackenzie, we want to create a more invested world, partnering with retail advisors and institutional clients to help investors become more knowledgeable, more educated, and more invested so they can meet their full potential. Integral to our purpose is to be a sustainable investor for today's clients and for the future generation of investors to come. I'm so excited to moderate today's Impact Spotlight, a multi-generational approach to sustainability. With us today is John Cook, SVP and co-lead of our Mackenzie Greenchip investment team, Lauren Grierson, co-founder of Trees CO2, and Kaitlin Grierson, co-founder of Trees CO2. Our panelists will be discussing their unique journeys to advocating for climate action across Canada and providing valuable insights for how Canadians of all ages can get involved to what has been called the global sustainability revolution. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? And maybe, John, I'll throw this question over to you first. There's no denying that climate change is a global emergency. But what makes this a uniquely Canadian issue that Canadians should care about?
Yeah, well, we've been blessed with this gorgeous country and we have to take care of it. But I guess as a portfolio manager, let me give you a little bit of an economic thought on why we need to consider climate change and take care of this planet. Our economy is so dependent on natural resources, forestry, agriculture, fisheries, and so on. And climate is absolutely affecting those businesses, and that means jobs for Canadians. And so we need to take care of those industries and those people. And as we try to transition to a more sustainable future, we need to do it in a just way. At the same time, we have real challenges that intersect with climate. Canadians are amongst the highest per capita emitters of greenhouse gases in the world, which is a real challenge for us. And part of that is because we produce about 5% of the world's oil. So climate and our economy intersect all over the place, and Canadians and this generation and the jobs that they're going to need depend on us really addressing climate change.
Yeah, great response. It definitely is intertwined into the Canadian economy and a just transition. That's a key takeaway for all of us. What about, ladies, what do you think? How do you think this impacts the Canadian economy in Canada, and why is it important to us?
Well, in my opinion, nature is the definition of Canada. There's the maple leaf on Canada's flag, and so it's really important for Canadians to come together and unite on supporting our natural environment and taking climate action.
Wonderful, and maybe just because you're high school students, you've been advocating for climate, for nature-based solutions for a few years now. What motivated you to get started in this space?
Well, I think apart from climate change being one of the key defining challenges of our generation, there were a couple other things that specifically motivated us. One being that we grew up in BC, and a couple years ago when we moved to Toronto, we really noticed the lack of urban trees. So we wanted to take action and green our community. And in addition to that, when we lived in BC, in the summers we witnessed the devastating forest fires, and we knew that more trees have to be planted each year because conserving the trees isn't enough.
That's wonderful. And John, when we you recently joined Mackenzie, we're almost on our 1-year anniversary, and I know one of the things that we loved about you and your partners and Greenchip was that you're pioneers in the climate investing, environmental investing space. What motivated you to get started?
I wish I could say I had exactly the same passion in those early days as you two did. It's so obvious now, isn't it? But what really, I was an entrepreneur, and I saw this transition from an investment opportunity perspective. And I just really believed that there were going to be so many solutions needed to our challenge that were very economic. I mentioned earlier transitioning away from fossil fuels. And so I just saw it as an economic opportunity, and my background had been in investment management. So that's what my initial motivation was. But you get into this, and pretty quickly you realize that the challenges are immense, and the tragedies of what's happening to our environment cannot be ignored.
And maybe, John, that links into my next question is, what have you learned about this journey so far, and has there been a moment that has really made you rethink your own personal and professional goals? And you touched on that a little bit, but maybe a little bit more elaborate.
One thing I learned is riding my bike to work is really easy. You don't pay for parking. It's like there's so many things that we can now do that are actually not huge inconveniences and challenges, and actually simplifying our lives helps us address climate and other ecological challenges. And I didn't know that, or I didn't think about that before. I just got in my car and I drove down to Bay Street and went to work, and I didn't think about it. The other thing that I would say I've learned is the incredible people that are already engaged in this space and addressing these challenges. They're not only genuinely nice people and very thoughtful, but they're really smart. And that was something I didn't realize before. They were often, in my view, they were environmentalists, and you put them, and I had some friends who were environmentalists, but they were environmentalists. And really, that's not the case. They're just really smart people who realize that these changes have to happen.
That's right. And I think for just building on that, that's been my own experience as well, is that the amount of collaboration that exists in this space, and there's, we all have the same goal, and I just find that equally incredible. So Kaitlin and Lauren, what have you learned on your journey so far, and what was that defining moment that had you rethinking your own goals?
Well, I agree with everything that you, Faye, and John have said. I think a really key moment for us in our journey with Tree CO2 was attending the UN Youth Climate Action Summit, just to see so many youth from around the world coming together, again, to collaborate and for the same goals and motivations was so inspiring, but also motivated us to continue expanding our goals and to issue our call to action of 1,000 trees for every global youth. And I think on the other side, a big challenge that we've continued to face throughout our work is that tree planting and environmental work is often seen as a philanthropic issue instead of an investment. And so I think that's something we're trying to focus on. And thanks to Mackenzie's help and Elevate, we really feel like we're making progress on it.
Agreed. And is that maybe it's that your UN attendance may be one of your proudest achievements, but do you have which achievement maybe for each of you have you been most proud of so far?
Yes, so I think one of the things that I'm most proud of with our work with our organization Tree CO2 is now raising over $60,000 for tree planting, including over $25,000 for ecological reconciliation. And for me, that's what I'm most proud of, because I feel so empowered to be able to advance nature-based solutions and climate action as a young person for our country.
Do you have anything else to add?
Sure. I think one other really inspirational aspect of Tree CO2's work that I found is being able to engage with 200 students in our student ambassador program and just feeling all of the motivation and energy of everyone coming together, especially young people.
It's wonderful. You're building a community around this, which is incredible. John, what do you think your climate achievement that you're most proud of?
Before I'll get to that in one sec, but I just have to say that you asked a minute ago about what I learned. Like, what I've really learned is how hopeful we can be because of, your generation. Our generation has made such a mess of this world, and so congratulations on everything you're doing. I don't know, I guess I'm proud of a few things. I was really proud just to get Greenchip, which is now Mackenzie Greenchip, to a point where, so many investors could start seeing this as, it's not sustainable finance, it's just finance now. This is just getting integrated into traditional investment thinking. And there were some days when that was pretty hard, so I guess I'm proud of that. But I think what I'm most proud of is my business partner, Greg Payne. This was always going to be complex, this energy transition. There were no simple answers to getting us to a more sustainable future. And I think what I'm most proud of is that we asked difficult questions or forced difficult questions on those that thought it was going to be easier, came up, virtue signaling or any sort of suggestions that this could be easy. I think that's what I'm most proud of.
That's wonderful. And maybe building on that, are there some practical and tangible ways that Canadians can contribute to a more sustainable future? Maybe through their investments is one way.
I do think those who are fortunate to have some savings and have a choice where to play those, I will always make the case that capital is not being invested where I think it really needs to go these days and where the best returns are likely to be in the future. And I think that really ties in with the types of solutions that we need in this world. So yes, that's part of it, but I think, there's lots that don't have savings. And I think that, I mentioned riding a bike earlier. There are so many things we can do. Eating less meat, consuming less of the things that we don't really need. When you go to buy those next set of clothes, just ask yourself, do I really need that or this new bag or whatever it is? I really think that the biggest solutions are actually some of the most simple things.
Yes. It's also good for the wallet.
It's good for the wallet. It's good for the wallet.
And what do you have some practical examples for how Canadians can get involved?
Yes, I think like John was saying, there's so many different ways Canadians can make an impact. I think Canada overall has such an opportunity in protecting the nature-based solutions we already have and conserving them, as well as advancing them through planting, as we were talking about. And one specific example of how Canadians can get involved is support the Great Canadian Tree Challenge, a fundraising initiative started by our partner Project Forest in collaboration with the Swan River First Nations Reserve for ecological reconciliation.
Wonderful. And I think Elevate will be supporting some planting. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. We're so grateful to Elevate for supporting the planting of 20-30 trees with the Swan River First Nations Reserve Ecological Planting Project. And this is an amazing project, especially because it has received government match funding under the government's 2 billion tree program. And so just doubling the impact is always a great place to start.
That is a great and impactful project, and I recommend everyone joining us today go online to projectforest.ca, is it? And learn about more about Swan River. So maybe if I can stay with Lauren and Kaitlin, what are your future environmental goals, and is there anything you'd like to learn more about when it comes to sustainability?
I think there's so much to learn, an endless amount, but something Kaitlin and I have been really interested in is learning about nature-based solutions right now, but also how those are the bridge until we have scaled up the technological solutions for climate change. And so I think really the connections between nature and technology is a very fascinating topic that definitely will create a lot of positive impact.
Thank you for that. I think I agree the journey and how we get there is important, and there's certain things we need to do today before we get those future innovations ready. John, what about for yourself? Do you have any environmental goals?
Well, one of the goals that one of the things that I always try and maintain is some humility around really understanding how this is all going to play out. It is extremely complicated, but what that means is we can challenge ourselves all the time to, as you've suggested, learn, understand the connections between technologies and real environmental solutions, and which one makes this, working in this space intellectually fascinating. But you really get into a dangerous spot, I think, when you believe that you have all the answers. Like tree planting is I've planted a lot of trees in my life, as my back would tell you, but it is so important. There's so many things that we need to be doing, and I don't think any of us have all the answers. So humility, I would say, is a goal. Like maintain humility, which I hope I've done, would be my goal going forward.
That's a great goal for all of us. So maybe just one final question before we wrap up, and a good way to wrap up, maybe John, I'll start with you. Looking into the future, what do you hope for the generations to come?
I'm really excited for the generations that come. I've known you two for a long time, and it's unbelievable what you've done. But I see other young people that really understand the challenges that we face, and you seem so willing to, make the changes to your lives and the sacrifices to get there. So I'm actually really optimistic about the future. And what we're seeing in our business, Fate, is mainstream investors and even large institutional investors are taking this very seriously. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to get there. It's going to be challenging, but I'm hopeful.
With these two, if we have, and I know we have a lot of youth in Canada that are similar to Lauren and Kaitlin, but thank you for being role models for them. What do you hope for future generations?
I think there's so much, as you've been saying, to be optimistic for. One of the things that we're really hoping for is the trillion tree goal, which has been supported by the UN and World Economic Forum, and this ties in exactly with our call to action to plant 1,000 trees for every global youth. So we're really hoping to see 1 trillion trees to be grown, conserved, and planted. And in addition, there's so many climate goals. I think, Lauren, you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I think just if the future generations could look back on the work that we're doing today and feel proud of what we've done, and feel proud that we have hopefully by then met the Paris Agreement targets and other goals, probably by the IPCC or some of the COP conferences. I think just looking back and being able to feel proud of what we've done is the goal for us.
That's wonderful. I hope so too. And as I said earlier, you guys do make me hopeful for our planet and for our future. Maybe can you just tell for all the youth that are joining us today, how can they get involved? Do they go on to treeco2.com and maybe just a bit on that so they know how to become ambassadors?
Absolutely. Any of the youth watching today, you can visit our website, treesco2.com, or our social medias at trees_CO2. We're always looking for more youth to join the cause and be student ambassadors.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, John, Kaitlin, and Lauren, for the very insightful conversation. I hope our viewers have been able to take away a few valuable insights that can be put to practice today. We urge you to continue to learn about the impact of climate change to our planet and to future generations. And I know we're going to see Dr. Jane Goodall soon, but in her words, only if we understand can we care, only if we care we will help, and only if we help we shall be saved. On behalf of all my colleagues at Mackenzie Investments, thank you for joining us today.